Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion, and that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, February 23rd, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, guys, let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast, as we try to be, and sometimes the things we may show may be of some things may be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is fine. Aside from that, welcome. So, not really a lot to get into in the midweek of this week so far, aside from the fact, let's just say the Mayo is upon us, especially in the king of the Hold My Beer tournament. It seems Florida is walking away, especially if I can find words, that'd be great. Especially with the fact of the matter is they're too now pushing the midterm election push, and they are pulling all the stops out. And one would think that Trump will be behind this, but oh no, it's the Trump familiarity lineup.
BenFlorida.com.
Mike Flynn.
I'm going to be there.
Roger Stone.
Fixing 2020.
Mike Lindell. They're all promoting Defend Florida, a self-described citizens organization touting false claims about widespread election fraud.
That happened thousands and thousands of times in the 2020 election.
Caroline Weatherington, the once president of Women for Trump Florida, is a co-founder of Defend Florida. The group recently released a report that calls for the purging of voter rolls and changing Florida election laws, even though in November of 2020, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis said this.
We're now being looked at as the state that did it right.
Defend Florida's co-founders told reporters they found more than 5,000 instances of voter or voting irregularities in Florida, and they say they have signed affidavits to prove all of them.
The group has not provided me with any actionable data.
Marion County Supervisor of Elections Wesley Wilcox, a registered Republican, is the president of the Florida Supervisor of Elections Association, which represents supervisors in the state's 67 counties.
I take it as a slap that they're insinuating that we are not following the law.
The group is asking election officials to remove inactive voters from the registration list. Voters like 78-year-old Sally Davidson.
Did you know you were on that list?
No.
Heavens no.
We tracked her down to find out if she was aware Defend Florida had deemed her voter registration problematic.
They cannot take my God-given constitutional right away from me because as the Constitution is written now, it doesn't say failure to vote.
She hasn't voted in decades, but remains active in the electoral process by signing petitions. Defend Florida also claims it discovered tens of thousands of people registered at locations that are not residential addresses. At the top of their list of examples, over 9,100 registered at the Crestview Courthouse. We reached out to Okaloosa County, where the courthouse is located. They tell us there are actually 7,670 registered voters at the courthouse. It's an address the county assigned to them because about half are active military or their family members.
They may literally be in Afghanistan, Germany. They still are eligible to vote.
The others are those without a physical address, like a voter living in a boat or an RV. This month, Florida Republicans introduced a new bill that aims to put in place many of the measures Defend Florida is pushing. It's calling for an Office of Election Crimes and Security, more voter ID requirements, adding steps to more limits on vote by mail, and requires county supervisors of elections to update voter registration lists more often.
We didn't have a totally clean election because we got really dirty voter rolls, but at least the people of Florida came out and voted.
I have yet to see something that is factual that needs to be addressed.
So Layla, in all of your reporting, okay, were you able to find any evidence to back up this group's claims?
No.
no proof at all for some of their claims. And here's another example, Aaron. We looked into the claim they made in their report that they found a voter in Alachua County that voted, then drove 300 miles south to Broward County, voted again on the same day. We reached out to Alachua County election officials to look into that claim. They had already looked into it, and they said what they realized was the group was talking about two separate individuals with similar voting information that voted separately. So again, another example without any proof or evidence to back it up. And Aaron, we should mention, we reached out to the co-founders on multiple occasions, tried to talk to them about this, but our requests for an interview were denied.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second, folks. Again, we should not be surprised. I keep on saying this for this to be the year of the midterm elections, and it's always the ones that are screaming voter fraud, which I find amazing because Florida, in the case of Florida, Trump won that by a landslide. He beat Biden in Florida, which is amazing to me that everybody that's claiming false vote, everybody that's claiming these, fraudulent votes, the president, the guy that you wanted, won, and you're screaming about fraudulent votes. Now, why is that? I've said it before, and I'll say it again, guys. The midterm elections are coming, and you don't think for one second that Republicans are pulling out all the stops, because I must keep on saying this for the simple fact of the matter, and it's not going to go. It's going to be the same as before. That for the simple fact of the matter, Democrats are going to have a harder time convincing voters to vote for them again, because right now Democrats don't have a lot of wins in that column right now. But it'll be easier for Republicans to convince idiots who have a memory issue, because Republicans haven't done anything, and now they're saying, "Oh, we want to make sure voter fraud is not happening," even though to this day there's not any counts of voter fraud. The only voter fraud that ever has been recorded was done for Republican parties. So again, you would think for one second it's just in Florida. No, it's not just Florida.
President's Day with early.
Quiet you. It's not just in Florida that's happening. It's also happening in Texas.
Now marking Black History Month and President's Day with early voting underway in Texas. Deep concerns about the new laws that many say make it harder for people to cast their votes. Rachel Scott is back with more on the changes and the impact they are having. Good morning again, Rachel.
Hey, Eva, good morning. So across the country, more than a dozen states have already passed laws that make it tougher for people to vote. But we're seeing the very first test of that in Texas, where one voter says it took her 28 days before she could finally cast her ballot.
This morning, with Texas voters heading to the polls for the nation's first primary.
Get out and vote.
The state's new and strict election law is being put to the test.
What was the first thing that crossed your mind when you learned of the new election laws in the state of Texas?
Jim Crow 2.0.
74-year-old Pam Gaskin has been voting by mail for nearly a decade. She says it has never been this hard to cast her ballot.
Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
No. You don't know which way to turn.
Pam and her husband Michael, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, were denied ballots twice. And they are among thousands of voters who have had mail-in ballot applications rejected in Texas. One reason, for the first time, voters are required to submit their social security number or driver's license number. And it has to be the same form of ID they use when they first registered to vote. For Pam, that was 46 years ago.
I'm 74 years old. I certainly didn't remember what I put on my application.
It took 3 forms, 28 days, several calls, and some guessing before her mail-in ballot was accepted.
These laws were meant to stop certain classes and categories of people from voting.
Across the country, 19 states have passed laws that make it tougher for people to vote. Civil rights organizations are sounding the alarm.
We've seen really extraordinary results coming from the power of the Black community in Texas. And unfortunately, it is exactly because of that power that we've seen state officials react by trying to make voting more difficult for that community.
Republicans in Texas insist the new law protects the integrity of elections. Some voters support the changes.
In your opinion, these new changes, you see them as helping protect elections?
Yes, I do. I don't want any fraud.
But Pam worries others won't go through the lengths she did to cast their ballot.
I want everybody who can hear me say this to hear this. It is worth it. It is worth it. Don't give up. Don't give in.
So some civil rights organizations say that this is a test run for that new election law, but they say what's even more concerning is that some states are looking to copy it ahead of the midterm elections.
So the weird part about this is, and I say this all the time, people say, well, what's the problem with this? Well, you have to understand, a lot of the older voters, like they said in the Texas law, you have to have the same information that you register with. Let's be honest, if you've been moving around a lot, or you've been hopping, if you live in an apartment, if you forgot to update your address since you left your parents' house and things of that nature, then yes, it'll be a problem for you in Texas, because unless you match what you really had or went back and changed it, you won't be able to early vote. You also have to have an ID. And a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, what's the problem with IDs? Well, the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of the older generation does not have them. Very seldom will they have IDs, much less driver's licenses, for obvious reasons. But again, this is discrimination, because this is, as the lady did point out, in the news article, that this is Jim Crow. This is Jim Crow. Jim Crow is the word I was looking for. This is Jim Crow 2.0. They're doing everything that they can to make sure they stop the right kind of people from voting. Because you know why? Conservatives saw what happened in Georgia. Conservatives saw what happened when Black people and other minorities come together and elect, turn a usually red state blue by electing 2 senators, one of them being the first African-American senator in that state's history. Republicans saw that and dismissed mail-in voting. So now what they're doing this election, and if they can't do it on a federal level, they are doing it at a state level, which means that they are going to make sure to target these people. And trust me, we are being targeted. Voters are being targeted. This is why I keep saying all the time, your vote matters. If your vote didn't matter, they would not be trying every legislation trick in the book to prevent you from doing it. Because it's true. This is the reason why the Voting Rights Act was so popular. The John Lewis Act was so popular, because they would have made those two federal acts would have made all of this disappear. The Voting Rights Act was automatic voting by automatic registered voters, that you didn't have to go through all the hoopla of going to your county clerk and registering your vote. You would automatically be entered in. At the same time, Election Day was a federal holiday. You didn't have to decide between working and then trying to get to your local voting poll to hopefully get them before the polls close. You didn't have to decide. It was just one big old federal holiday. And at the same time, it basically allowed people to take all the forms of voting. Mail-in voting, especially in a COVID situation, such as the one we're in right now, and especially early voting, which again, Republicans and conservatives are doing everything that they can to make sure that doesn't happen. Because why? We have seen what happens when lack of voting led to Trump. I'm just being honest. For a lot of people that didn't like Hillary Clinton, so they figured they just wouldn't vote at all, not realizing that just a simple act of a no vote might as well be a vote for the other side. That's just being honest. But we will follow those stories and more, because trust me, as we get closer to those midterm elections, these laws and those stories are only going to get wilder. But speaking of things that are finally seeing some justice of light, the trial for the Aubrey's killers, as far as the hate crime, has been concluded, and I was surprised that the jury came to a verdict in almost record time.
Ahmaud Aubrey's family and supporters after a federal jury found 3 men guilty of hate crimes, violating Aubrey's rights by chasing him on a public street and killing him because he was Black. Gregory McMichael, son Travis, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan, already convicted of murder in state court, today also found guilty of attempted kidnapping, and the McMichaels guilty of using a firearm to commit a violent crime.
I'm glad that the jurors came in with the correct verdict, and we finally got some justice for them.
Guilty on every count after less than 4 hours of deliberations. Prosecutors telling the jury racial hatred motivated the 3 men, showing texts and social media posts laced with racial slurs, revealing Bryan was angry about his daughter's relationship with a Black man. The older McMichael making disparaging remarks about Black tenants renting property he owned. His son writing a message about liking his job because 0 N-words work with me. Why do you think it's important to pursue these cases? If you can't walk down the street without fearing being targeted because of who you are, then what kind of country can we really hope to build? In Washington, the Attorney General vowed to prosecute more cases like this one.
I cannot imagine the pain that a mother feels to have her son run down and then gunned down.
The verdict coming on the eve of the 2-year anniversary of the fatal encounter, also designated Ahmaud Aubrey Day to honor him by Georgia's legislature. The 3 men convicted of killing Aubrey, already serving life in prison, now each face the possibility of another life sentence, guilty of committing a hate crime.
I never thought we'd hear that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I never thought we would ever hear 3 white men who hunted, who systematically went after, cornered, and killed a black man, that we would finally hear that 3 white men were convicted guilty of a hate crime. I mean, feel free to comment on that, because I never thought I'd hear that in this day and age, not in my lifetime, because we've seen what happens when it comes to black people. Yes, we are disenfranchised by the court system because it is designed against us. We are disenfranchised to see justice ever happen. Even in this case of Ahmaud Aubrey, that, we're still, a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, justice has been satisfied. I'm like, well, no, it hasn't, because we still need to go after the law enforcement and the prosecution that decided not to go after these 3 men. Because you guys got to remember that the charges weren't brought up by the same county this happened in. They actually had to go outside of the county, get a federal prosecutor to come back and bring these charges up. So, and keep in mind that they did try to skirt this under the rug. They did. So the law enforcement that was involved, the prosecutors that were involved, still also need to be brought to justice. Because, again, not only those 3 men will never see the light of day at this point. They're in jail. They're in jail until they're dead. And that's fine. That's how it should be. But honestly, there's still people out there.
Controversial Florida legislation that
Quiet you. There are still people out there that still need to face justice. Still do. And it's one of those things that a lot of people are sitting there saying. I know Ahmaud Aubrey's mom in a later post conference said that there's still people out there that are still responsible, and that she called upon the Department of Justice to do so. So we're going to see what happens from there. But yeah, I mean, was justice served for these 3 men? Absolutely. Are there still people out there that still need to be just as found guilty as those 3 men? Yes. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Because just like America does with white women, and when a white woman gets killed, that person gets thrown under the jail and then buried under the land that the jail used to be at. The same should be said for everybody, including black people in that sense. If you kill a black man, it should be the same as you killing a white woman. Should be, but we'll see. But again, I want to move this on as well, as guys, because I never thought Florida, like I said before, Florida is the king of the hold my beer competition, especially with their newest law that I'm still surprised it is still making its way through its state legislature, about the Don't Say Gay bill. I wish I can make this up.
Now to that controversial Florida legislation that critics are calling the Don't Say Gay bill. The bill says that schools, quote, may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in K through 12th grade, or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students. The bill does not actually define what is age appropriate. To bring us the very latest, we're joined now by ABC's Victor Akendo from Miami. Victor, thanks so much for joining us. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who could become a presidential candidate in 2024, has signaled his support for this bill. Tell us what he has said about it and why he thinks that this is a good idea.
Lindsay, it was here in Miami where the governor did express his support for this bill. At least he signaled his support for it. He said in part that it was entirely inappropriate for teachers to be having conversations with students about gender identity. He goes on claiming that there have been instances where students have been told by different folks not to worry about picking their gender yet, and then not telling their parents about these discussions. Finally, he said that the larger issue here is that parents need to have a seat at the table when it comes to what's going on in schools. Lindsay?
And of course, the backlash to this bill has been strong and swift. In a tweet, President Biden called it hateful, and advocates say that it could effectively ban all lessons about LGBTQ plus issues. Tell us more about the efforts to stop this from becoming law in Florida.
Lindsay, advocacy organizations are doing what they can, but this bill keeps moving forward. The official release from the White House here: conservative politicians in Florida advance legislation that is designed to target and attack kids who need support the most. LGBTQI plus students who are already vulnerable to bullying and violence just for being themselves. And just today we heard from Press Secretary Jen Psaki. She said, it's cruel, it's harmful, and it's certainly something that is not helping these young people, members of this community who are already vulnerable, already being bullied. Lindsay, it's pretty rare to hear from the White House on a Florida bill.
And this bill, of course, has a similar feature to the controversial Texas abortion law, SB 8. It encourages parents to bring lawsuits against educators if they believe sexual orientation was discussed in the classroom. What do critics have to say about that?
Well, the concern here is that it will really put teachers on thin ice, that they could be potentially open to lawsuits if they discuss sexual orientation. Here's just one example that could arise. Let's say a teacher has a student with same-sex parents. If that were to come up in the classroom, how could they possibly explain that without potentially running into some of these troubles here? As you mentioned, Lindsay, this bill, it doesn't clearly define what is age or developmentally appropriate. So this could really pit parent against parent or create this society of stigma. Lindsay?
But Victor, curious to know, how is this bill being received in Florida?
Lindsay, we've heard both sides here. We heard from one mom who said that her transgender daughter's school kept her daughter's privacy from her, and she made it feel like this school was telling her daughter that they needed to protect her from her mother rather than letting her mother protect her. Now, on the other side, they're calling it offensive, discriminatory, say that we're going backwards here, and that this basically sends a message to the LGBTQ community that their existence is so inappropriate here that it shouldn't even be discussed in the classroom. Keep in mind, there is already a high suicide rate in this community, and if you remove some of these critical lifelines, like in many cases teachers and counselors, that might make this even worse. Lindsay?
And he's exactly right. He's exactly right. Again, I've never understood this. I've always said that best. School used to be this learning, safe space, open place where kids can go and, find teachers and educators that just want to see them succeed, that they can confide in, find support, find friends, hopefully find themselves in a way, in a social circle. It amazes me so about Florida that I just don't understand it. So what if your child is gay? If your child is a member of the LGBTQ plus community, they're still your child. But with also that being said, they're still a student. The fact that you're trying to limit what can be taught, what kills me is they always limit the sexual orientation, what can be talked about in school, but say one thing about religion, you can't let us talk about our Christianity. Oh, then they're offended because trust and believe, there are people out there that want to force Jesus down every non-Christian and atheist throat they can find. Truly. There are people out there that would love nothing more to put study time and Bible time in public school. Trust me, they are out there. Not only just in Florida, in Tennessee as well. They would love to do that, but knowing full well they can't. I apply the same thing to them saying, well, you can't say gay, you can't say this, you can't talk about sexual orientation. If it wasn't for sexual education, there would be a lot more teen births and a lot more STDs, because when sexual education got introduced into classrooms, guess what happened? Teen birth rates plummeted, STDs plummeted. But yet you want to take away the talk. You want to take away the talk because why? Because some parents don't like the idea that your child could be sitting right next to a child that identifies as gay or lesbian or straight, binary, non-binary. I can't remember all of them, but let's just say they go by different pronouns. Let's just say that specific child that is in your classroom with your child is different from them, and it freaks you out as a parent. But you're scared that your child may be influenced and think that because they're talking to them that they will convert them. Let me tell you this off the bat for all those parents who think like that. You can't be around an LGBTQ person and just instantly be converted. Doesn't work like that. Never has. And you can tell, and you can ask anybody in the LGBTQ plus community. It doesn't work like that. They don't just start talking to you and hanging out to you and you realize one day, oh, I'm one of you. No, it doesn't work like that. But in some parents' minds, it's the influence that frightens them. It's the influence of not understanding. And I've always said it best. The greatest fear is the fear of the unknown. People fear what they do not understand. And I would think to myself, just because it's a school and teachers, because we depend on teachers so much. We depend on teachers to educate. We depend on teachers to guide our children. We depend on teachers to be able to be that lifeline for kids to come to if they can't come to somebody at home. But yet, Florida, the current reigning leader of the Hold My Beer Championship, wants to sit there and say, you can't talk about this in school anymore. And the sad part is, that reporter is right. There may be alternatives of that bill getting passed around in other states right now because people literally don't want to talk about it, which tells you a lot. We don't want to, there's people in America that don't want to face our history. There's people in America that don't want to face our differences. There are people in America that don't like Black people, that don't want to admit it. But again, it's amazing to me where I sit there and say, they never want to face it. They'll do everything to hide it. Let's bury it. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't say gay. Because again, it's amazing to me that we are not embracing our differences. How are we not in 2022 and we're still not embracing our differences? That we have to put laws between us because only the divisive are being divisive. The ones that are sitting there saying, well, that ain't right. Well, it's either you can be progressive with the times or you can be left in the dust. The world is moving on without you, folks. Just because you don't like the way the world is turning does not mean that you put in laws that you prefer that we don't. But it is amazing to me that parents want to sit there and think this is okay when I'm sitting there wondering that parents are still wanting to have a say in what their child learns. And I've said it before, let education happen because education right now needs an improvement. Educators need to be paid more. And on top of that, if you really don't like what your child is experiencing or learning in school, homeschool them. Do that. Take your child out of whatever school system they're in, homeschool them. Because I guarantee you, what they're going to learn in school, because I've always said it best, school is the best experience, is the best teacher of life. They learn social skills as well as learning some social cues, at the same time having an idea about themselves. That's how it should work. But I've never understood parents that think this is a great idea because your child isn't gay. I wouldn't care if my future child was gay or not. I'm going to love them regardless. They are my child. They're part of me. They didn't come out of me. Well, in a sense, but they're still my child. That being said, I'm still going to love them and support them no matter what, because that's what a parent should be. A parent shouldn't be worried about them being influenced at school. The only thing they should be influenced by is basically learning and actually being encouraged to learn. That should be the thing you should be worried about. But moving right along, guys, I did want to get to this next case because we have a lot of trials going forward, and actually some trials concluding. But now we're going to finally have the trial for the detective, the lone detective that will be tried for killing Breonna Taylor. The one single person out of a SWAT no-knock raid is being charged not because they killed Breonna Taylor, because they fired shots in the apartment next to them.
Right now in Louisville, Kentucky, for the former Kentucky police officer, Brett Hankinson, who was involved in a raid that killed Breonna Taylor. Hankinson is charged with firing into a neighboring apartment while serving a no-knock warrant on Taylor's apartment in March 13th of 2020. He has pleaded not guilty. If convicted, he faces up to 5 years in prison. Host and legal analyst at Law and Crime Network, Terry Austin, joins me now for more on this. Terry, opening statements have now wrapped up. What are your big takeaways?
Well, what I was impressed with is the fact that the prosecution laid out so many of the facts. In fact, I thought that the defense said that she laid out too many facts, but I think the jury is going to be very clear on at least what the prosecution is thinking the case will say to them. And essentially what Ms. Whaley is trying to tell them is there was no need for Brett Hankinson to shoot wildly. He had 10 shots and several of them went into this neighboring apartment, and they are going to have witnesses to testify. Cody, who was the individual in the other apartment along with Chelsea, his partner, and in fact she was pregnant and a young son. But the testimony is basically going to be that these shots came wildly into the apartment and that Brett Hankinson really didn't see an AR-15 as he thought he had. It was really a Glock. And so he wasn't justified. He was being very unreasonable. And she laid out every single detail for the jury to see. And the defense basically just said, look, this was a chaotic scene. And what Hankinson did was reasonable, it was logical, and it was rational. So we'll see what the jury thinks based on this evidence.
What are you going to be looking out for these next few days as this trial gets underway? What are some of the key points and arguments that could sway this trial one way or the other?
The one piece of evidence that I'm very curious to see is what will the neighbors say? We know we're going to hear from officers. We're going to hear from the SWAT team. We're going to hear from firearms experts and trainers. But I'm really curious what the neighbors will say. Theoretically, they should be objective. They should be able to say what they heard. Was there a knock? Was there a voice that said police officers? Did anyone identify themselves? Were the shootings wild? So I'm really curious to see what those neighbors think happened on that night of the scene. And frankly, I think they're going to shed more light to the jury as far as what was happening. I think everyone is going to say it was chaotic. And frankly, I don't think that bodes well for the defense. They're supposed to be able to go into a scene and make sure that they are handling it so it doesn't become chaotic. That's not an excuse to have shot wildly into either one of those apartments.
And this is the only trial and charge, for that matter, to emerge from the police raid that killed Breonna Taylor. But Brett Hankinson is not the officer who shot her. He's not being charged in relation to shooting Breonna Taylor. He's being charged for shooting into the neighbor's apartment, as you said. So what is the broader impact, if any, of this trial, since Hankinson is the sole officer from that raid who is being tried?
It's an excellent question, and I think the community at large, and particularly the parents and the family of Breonna Taylor, want some justice. They want to make sure that the people responsible for her death do have charges brought against them. The state did not feel as though there was enough to bring anything against the other officers.
All right, Terry Austin, always.
So, long story short, I don't mean to say it's a worthless trial, because it really is. It's a worthless trial just because he's not being charged with what happened to Breonna Taylor. Again, like I said at the beginning before I play this video, he's only being charged with shooting into another apartment. That's it. Not being charged with a no-knock warrant, not being charged with murdering someone in their sleep, not being charged for anything that happened except that he fired a few rounds and they went to another apartment. It's a little difficult to sit there and say that justice is being served, considering the fact that they did everything they could, because Breonna, like I said before, when it comes to police or when it comes to anything involving minorities, specifically Black people, the first thing that they always try to do is character assassination. They will try to find any dirt on on the victim. They'll try to find any dirt on them whatsoever. They will try to dismay them or say, well, their past, what they listen to, their habits is what led up, and they'll lead it into a narrative that'll be like, this is what led up to them dying, which again is BS. It is BS for them to do that. Even more so that now this detective is basically being in a case that really does not involve Breonna Taylor. And I'm just sitting there wondering, this feels more like lip service. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Louisville Police Department was definitely at fault. The Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, who's also related to Mitch McConnell, he's at fault. They all passed on this to give those officers that were involved in that shooting a pass. And this is why I say, besides those officers using a no-knock warrant, this is why no-knock warrants are dangerous, especially if you're like me and you're a owner of firearms. Somebody comes through your door, no-knock warrants just mean that you can bust in. Announcing yourself police after the fact means nothing. If I heard my door get crashed in the middle of the night, I'm already armed and ready. Regardless of what you say next means nothing, because at that point, anything that's not me or mine that comes to that door, it's getting handled. But again, this is why I say no-knock warrants are dangerous, because we've seen what happens when no-knock warrants get involved. Not only with Breonna Taylor just a couple of years ago, we're already seeing it now with a case where a person was just literally sleeping on a friend's couch, and because he was armed, because that man was armed, and because an officer who entered the door 2 seconds later decided to shoot this young man, tells you off the bat how dangerous no-knock warrants really are. So I hate to say it, as much as we're going to cover that story, it's just a little hard to sit there and swallow that justice is going to be done from that, because in reality, I don't think it will be. But speaking of justice that may be done, again, like I said, we had a couple of cases as that case is starting up. The case for George Floyd's three other co-murderers is now wrapping down as juries are now in deliberation.
Set to begin in the trial of the other 3 police officers involved in the murder of George Floyd. Alex Perez has the latest.
The now former cops Tao, J. Alexander King, and Thomas Lane standing trial in federal court for violating George Floyd's civil rights. Tao and King accused of failing to intervene and stop Chauvin when he jammed his knee on George Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. And all 3 charged with willfully failing to aid Floyd when he was in clear need of medical care. The prosecutor, in closing arguments Tuesday, arguing the 3 men did nothing to control Chauvin or save Floyd, who she said died a slow and torturous death.
Each person has a level of responsibility, and these charges determine where each person lies on that level of responsibility. So you can absolutely see varying verdicts.
But defense attorneys pointing the finger at Chauvin, arguing he took command over the scene. Tao, the one seen corralling the crowd, told jurors he didn't realize the seriousness of Floyd's injuries. I had no idea. King, who was a rookie officer and had been trained by Chauvin, testified, he was my senior officer and I trusted his advice. And Lane, who at one point asked if they should roll Floyd over during the ordeal and got in the ambulance with Floyd, testified on Chauvin's response, saying it seemed reasonable at the time.
Even though they're saying that, this was his action, this was directed by him, I think the jury is still going to look to them and their individual roles to determine whether or not that is an accurate statement or whether that was even acceptable behavior.
And sentencing in federal trials like this one can vary widely, but if convicted, all 3 defendants could face life in prison or the death penalty.
So as we hopefully, I would like to think it's going to come back in the same speed as the Ahmaud Arbery hate crime trial did, but we will see. Again, I like the fact that you see all 3 men just go to the I was following someone else's orders. I was only going by what I was trained to do. I kind of figured they all do that. All 3 of them would do exactly what I thought they would do. Roll over and say that Derek Chauvin is the one they followed. He was the lead officer. We all followed him. Well, hopefully all 3 of you will be following him to jail, because that's where you belong. But we will keep up with that. If the jury does come back with a verdict, like I said before, usually it's a couple of hours. Sometimes it's a matter of days, but we will follow that as it comes along. But the last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment, it's basically the police apology to that young girl that was accused of using social media to bomb her school, and now we finally get the police apology.
Renaissance Charter School in South Florida, shocked.
That's kind of crazy.
After police admitted they arrested and incarcerated the wrong student in connection with threats against the school on social media.
They should have really done more investigation before they accused and sent someone to jail, especially a minor.
That student, Nia Williams, spent 11 days in a juvenile detention center last November, all the while maintaining her innocence.
On the date of arrest, our investigation and assessment of available evidence suggested that the person arrested was indeed responsible for the crime that was committed.
That evidence, threats to blow up the school and kill people on social media, messages sent from an Instagram account in her name. Authorities later discovering that account was fake and created by another student.
The actual suspect maliciously impersonated another student, created email and Instagram accounts to send herself, as well as other students, threatening messages, and intentionally lied to law enforcement and school staff to frame another person.
The family of Nia Williams is now suing the school district and the social media company Meta, saying this incident was part of a larger pattern of bullying against her daughter that the school and the social media giant didn't address. They plan to eventually include the police department in the lawsuit.
To be honest, at first when the officers told me it's her and we have evidence, I was still against her, and I felt bad knowing that it wasn't her.
A spokesperson for Renaissance Charter School responding, "Our highest priority remains the safety and security of our students. We always have and always will take all the appropriate actions to ensure our students and staff are safe. We are not at liberty to discuss any private student issues, and we do not comment on pending litigation." Representatives for Meta did not immediately return a request for comment. 13-year-old Nia, now cleared of all charges, is still feeling the effects of being falsely accused.
I feel distance, like I really don't want to talk to anybody.
Can't imagine what that's like.
And yeah, see, the thing about it is, I hope her mom, please go after everybody. You should, because that police apology was some bull. It was. Well, at the time we had the time with the information and everything and the evidence, we assumed that we had the right person. No, you didn't. If you see, I love when they sit there and say, well, at the time, this is the person that we thought we had, but then you come back and find out, oh wait, the actual person that did it imitated this person. So here's my thing about all this. Aside from the mother going after everybody, as she should go after everybody in litigation and get damages. She should. I don't blame her one freaking bit. Again, also with the simple fact of the matter is, where's the person that actually did it? Why aren't they put on blast? Like the daughter was put on, like the little girl was put on blast. The person that actually did it, why aren't they shown? Why aren't they put on blast? Because that little girl now has a stigma. And I've been saying this because every black person out there, everybody that's a minority, not just black people, I shouldn't say not just black people, but everybody that's a minority, there's one thing we all have in common. We all have a story with law enforcement. Some of us have more than one, but we all have it. It's like for some reason, it's like a rite of passage. We all have one run-in that we've had with law enforcement that never ended well for us. And it sticks to us. It changes us. It shapes, it affects our perception. It changes us. It's how we see the world. But this girl is seeing it at such a young age that now the only thing I hope for her is that, along with her mom collecting the damages for what's happened to her, I hope that young lady gets the help and therapy, in the mental therapy that she's going to need, the mental assistance that she needs, because that girl is going to go through life without the proper guidance and assistance. She may go through life with a stigma. Could you imagine being accused of something you did at an early age to have that kind of trauma and that follows you for the rest of your days? Yeah, that could mess you up. But again, I asked the same question. They were so sure that a black person did it that they didn't go back and double check. If only law enforcement were held to the same standards as journalism, because I don't call myself a journalist. I have not ever had journalist training. But I like to think that whenever I do talk about stories, I talk for a reputable source. At the same time, I back up what I say. If only some law enforcement out there could do the same. But that being said, guys, we're going to go move on to our feel-good segment, because usually how the fact we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. And trust me, I'm looking forward to Friday because this cold has been kicking my butt. So I apologize. My nose sounds stuffy, but I'm just coming on the other end and it feels phenomenal because yesterday your boy realized as he gets older, these colds are not like when you're 17, 18. These colds, when you hit 37, 38, they sit you down. Those are those colds where you're not, nope. Oh, I just cool. I got a sniffle. I'm cool. No, they sat there. This cold hit me and was like, I think you need to lay down right now. I was like, yeah, I lay down. I lay down. But thankfully feeling better on the mend. Just have to get these last couple of colds and that'll be my turn on the sick train. But anyway, enough about me. We want to get to some feel-good stories. Stories that put a song in your heart, some spirit in your step, give you a little positivity. And this kid, which I did talk about this kid earlier last year in my podcast. He was just named Magazine's Time Kid of the Year. Simply put, he is literally a preacher and doer of kindness.
Tonight, we want to introduce you to an 11-year-old recently named Kid of the Year, all because of his kindness and his determination to pay it forward. Orion Jean considers himself an ambassador for kindness.
For me, it can take on so many different forms, from just smiling at somebody or holding the door.
At just 11 years old, Orion is wise beyond his years. It all started 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic when he won the National Kindness Speech Contest.
Kindness is more important now than ever before. At the time that I wrote this speech, the world seemed like it had shut down, and hope was like, it was like, where is it? Where is the hope? Where is the love?
Orion, a living, breathing call to action, took the $500 prize money and paid it forward, creating Race to Kindness.
I decided to start my own kindness initiative.
His first kindness project, Race to 500 Toys, was a toy drive to benefit patients at a local children's hospital. He then moved on to a food drive, delivering 100,000 meals to families in need. He then turned to books, collecting and delivering 500,000 books to kids at book fairs across the country. This sixth grader, such an inspiration, Time Magazine named him Kid of the Year.
It's amazing to just think about how much of an impact it's going to make on the person who receives the kindness, and hopefully they'll want to spread kindness, and it's a ripple effect that goes on.
Thanks for that reminder, Orion.
So again, I love the fact of the matter is, and I say this beforehand when it comes to lots of these guys, there's nothing wrong with a simple act of kindness. I keep on saying the world needs a lot of it. If you have the ability to make somebody's life great, whether it's a minute, day, an hour, or a lifetime, go ahead and do so. The world could use more random acts of kindness. And that kid right there, he's going to be going places. If he runs for president, I'm voting for him. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know we're live. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do get out of here, some shameless plugging as I usually do. Let me first talk about my buddy, Big VZA Dot, who's going to be doing podcasts back very soon from his hiatus. You can definitely find him, either on Westwood on Facebook, Big VZA Dot on socials, where he does Smoking Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m., as well as the REF podcast, which is every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. But definitely check him out, either on Westwood on Facebook and Big VZA Dot on all socials. Also, shout out to Ari and Gee present Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. Certainly appreciate it. As you can see, their YouTube page right there. They also have a Facebook page also titled Geek Salad. There are a couple of guys that talk about everything pop culture, everything outside of it, from a very unfiltered but unique and intelligent point of view. And I love hearing those two guys talk, especially when they're talking with guests. Hopefully to have them on the Give It podcast very soon. But definitely check them out, R&G present Geek Salad on Facebook and on YouTube. As for me, guys, my IG handle is still BlackBox447 in your bottom left. Definitely like and follow me there because I usually post movie reviews, video game reviews, television shows, and sometimes gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, I am about encouraging and pushing positivity because right now, with everything going on in the world, we could use more of that. Too much negativity, we actually need to move forward with positivity and see how that changes your perception in life. Of course, the link at the bottom that you see there scrolling is also a link page. So if you copy and paste that in your browser, we'll take you to my link page that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, Y'all List Podcast, to where you'll be able to watch every podcast I've done so far, and you can like and share and comment from there. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about this podcast is definitely be vaccinated. Be vaccinated. My grammar's going out the window. Please get vaccinated. Get your shots. Wear a mask. Because right now, even though Omicron cases are coming down, This is not the time to let their foot off the gas. The only way we beat pandemics is to get vaccinated, to actually follow the instructions of those who are more educated than us, and simply put, that's how we get past it. We will never go back to the normal we once knew, but we will get back to some new sense of normal if everybody does the right thing. Not only for the simple fact that there are people who need life-saving treatments in hospitals that won't be able to get to. I'm going to talk about those on kidney dialysis, blood transfusions, diabetic needs as well, that are still being pushed back to their appointments because of COVID beds taking up space. The more we can keep COVID people out of the hospital, the more these people can still get the life-saving treatments that they need. So, with that being said, guys, how the Frack we got here is all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds, persuade people. We're simply doing what the news stations of old try to do: give you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind with yourself, but give you a logical perspective from as well. We do a lot better when we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Madam Vice President who is Black. At the same time, guys, when we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we find ourselves in the holes that we are right now. That's why everything is still going up at your paycheck. That's the reason why we got Trump in the first place, and all the more reason why we're still asking ourselves how the frack we got here. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys think. Aside from that, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.